Chat, what's poppin' YouTube? Today we're going to be looking at the indie debut of big-time YouTuber Daniel Greene with Breach of Peace. So, this is Daniel Greene's debut, you know, the biggest fantasy YouTuber in history. He released this book like 2 years ago, but I finally got around to reading it on a bus trip, and... So, as this is not a classic, the structure of this review is going to be a little different. I'll still give you my meme-filled summary, but then I'm going to go into a more extensive analysis of the text, a more critical analysis, but whatever, you don't care about all that shit, let's just spook into it. So, the story opens with Inspector Khalid. Khalid, I think it's supposed to be pronounced Khalid, that's how I pronounce it, but whatever. DJ Khalid is a policewoman in some loosely defined theocratic totalitarian imperial empire. The world building is really lukewarm, and so I'm not sure of a lot of the stuff that's going on here. They have guns, and they answer directly to God, or at least something that claims to be God. Like, seriously, the Holy Empire is literally ran by God. They have a Ministry of Truth and Defense and Health, which is directly ripped off from 1984 for some reason. And anyway, she is investigating this really grisly murder scene. It is graphically described, but is somehow not at all disturbing, because Daniel Greene had some shortcomings as an author that we'll get into later. But anyway, some group has attacked a rich family called the Pruitt family, who got rich off making steel for the war effort. So, Khalid is a decent inspector with a cartoonish smoking habit, like cigarettes literally just materialise in her hands willy-nilly.
Hey everybody, are you smoking cigarettes?
As she is uncovering the crime scene, her husband, Inspector Samuel, shows up. He was recently sent off to some other province to help with a chicken wrangler, but he just decided to leave and come back in time for this investigation. Sure. They go back into the house, but shit, Inspector Chapman, this Chad Samoan guy who has a childish rivalry with Samuel, is there. Anyway, the gang put aside their differences and look at the crime scene. They find rich Lady Pruitt and realise that something bit her. They can't find Lord Pruitt, but they hear something in the basement and go down to investigate. They go down and find this horrible fleshy monster. DJ Khalid almost dies, but manages to kill the monster. And the gang realises that something whack is going on here. So they go back to the police station and talk to Mr. Captain. Here is the first time we get any real world building of this world. Basically, Khalid thinks it's a demon that attacked her.
A demon? A monster? Yeah.
But the captain says that all the demons were hunted into extinction hundreds of years ago. We learn a bit about the modes of government. The police have a lot of power policing their own districts, and Mr. Captain is very strict and cares deeply about his citizens. The whole place used to be run by the army, but now the police took over. We learn about the Ministry of Truth, the Ministry of Defense, and the Ministry of Health, or, yeah, literally, they're just 1984 rip-offs. They make reference to something called a grip. Like, is this a movie set or something? And anyway, Mr. Captain Man doesn't believe DJ Khalid about the demon, and then Chappie comes in and says it's not a demon, and that the monster they fought is none other than Lord Pruitt himself, the owner and patriarch of the manor. Somehow, someone has turned him into a monster. So, Fireman Sam, DJ Khalid, and Chappie the Cappy are sent off to solve the mystery.
It looks like we have a real mystery on our hands.
Chappie says that he has some secret informants and goes off to meet with them, leaving Khalid and her husband to dick around for a bit. They deduce that Chapman is actually meeting up with the rebel informants. Yeah, there are rebels in this world, sure. And they meet up with him again. There is an argument between Sam and Chap, and Sam gets sent off. Khalid and Chapman have a talk. It is revealed that Lord Pruitt found a new way to produce steel, like 8 times cheaper, and revolutionised the war effort. They thought the rebels were behind his death, but apparently that is not the case. The rebels tell them about some super sus warehouse where a bunch of Ministry of Defense goons operate. However, it is hinted that Chapman might actually be working with the rebels for real. Khalid goes to arrest him, but then gets the shit beat out of her. And Chapman goes off to investigate the warehouse. He tells her to bring everyone.
I need all units! The whole squadron! Bring everyone!
She goes back and gives her husband and the captain the rundown. They think it's a rogue element within the Ministry of Defense who wanted to send a message to the Steel Barons about something or other, but the captain is a little unsure about the whole thing given the connections to the Ministry of Defense. However, he says that it is their jurisdiction technically, and that they swore an oath to the people. So they go in guns blazing and shut down the operation. They find Chapman, who has now been turned into one of the horrible monsters. They arrest the feds responsible, and DJ Khalid puts Chappie out of his misery. However, then some OP motherfucker called an Anointed shows up and kills basically everyone, Fireman Sam included. Anointed are the super duper OP chosen of God who have godlike powers. This Anointed informs DJ Khalid that this is a real Ministry of Defense operation and that the Steel Barons were planning to go private with their new steel technique, so the Empire bumped them off and federalized steel production. It then goes to kill Khalid, but is attacked by Monster Chapman, who somehow survived. Khalid escapes while the Anointed kills Chapman and runs off, ending up in a brothel.
Whores in this house. There's some whores in this house.
A bunch of whores help her escape back to the 7th Precinct, where she informs the captain everything. He goes to help her escape, but that motherfucking Anointed bitch shows up and kills everyone. The story ends with a guy in the Ministry of Truth being told to write up a story about how a warehouse, a police precinct, and a whorehouse all got burned down by rebels last night. However, his half-brother worked in the whorehouse and told him the whole story last night, so he knows it's bullshit, but he writes it down anyway. The end. Well, that was 16 Canadian dollars I'll never get back. What an enthralling and high-stakes read. All joking aside, I'm getting into the new analysis. First, I'm going to talk about the stuff I feel this book did objectively well, then what I think it did objectively poorly, and then we'll get into sort of the real analysis where I give my opinions and discuss the other stuff. So, what did Breach of Peace do well? Not much, if I'm being brutally honest, and this book actually exceeded my expectations, so I think the prose has a good rhythm to it. It flows really nicely, it's easy to follow, and conveyed the story well to the reader. It's nothing to write home about, no pun intended, but it's not bad. I've certainly read a lot worse, especially in indie fantasy. Other than that, I guess the cover is okay, but even still, it's not very inspiring. Like, if I was in a bookstore, I wouldn't pick this book up off the shelf because of the cover, but it looks professional. Now, what did this book do wrong? Quite a lot, unfortunately. So first off, the world building is terrible. I will be getting more into some personal gripes I have with the world building in the opinion section, but even from a more objective viewpoint, it's not good. I really know nothing about the world. I know there's an empire, but its reach and influence is unknown. I know that they claim to work for God directly, but not much else is known about that. I don't really understand the politics until well late into the novel, and the generic totalitarian tropes of a Ministry of Truth and stuff feel kind of out of place in the Holy Empire. It doesn't tell me enough until it's too late. It throws terms around like grip that I feel I should know what they are, but doesn't explain them. Another issue is the lack of a setting. I'm told we're in a manor, I'm told we're in a bar. There's not much else to go on. Character descriptions are also very lacking as well. I'm the type of reader who likes to visualize my characters, and Chapman is the only one that gets a proper description. The book is not even in first person, so there's no excuse. The only reason I know what Khalid... I still don't know if I'm saying that name correctly, but Khalid and Sam look like is because of the front cover. The dialogue is also pretty bland and riddled with cliches. It seems most of the time you could completely ignore dialogue tags and just have it be generic cop says this, generic cop says that. Very boring. The whole thing is also riddled with cliches in general. There is literally a lightning storm during the final showdown, and there is, and I swear I'm not lying, a character literally described as being tall, dark, and handsome. So, yeah, onto what I thought about it. So I'll be honest, I went in with extremely low expectations. I'd heard from basically everyone that wasn't a complete Daniel Greene simp that this book was bad. However, I was actually pleasantly surprised by it, which isn't exactly a glowing endorsement, but hey. While I found the characters to be boring and forgettable, the world to be basically a blank canvas with the occasional cliché, and the story to be a plodding and predictable mess, there was something about it that did interest me. Just enough was hinted at about the greater world to get that sort of 14-year-old fantasy nerd I thought I'd long left behind to be interested in this world. Things like the Anointed, while having cringe dialogue, was really cool, and despite my better judgment, I find myself actually wanting to learn more about this world and spend more time in it. So on that front, the book did succeed. I know that this was supposed to be a prequel series, or the first novella in a prequel series, to set up the world for an intended main series, but it really fails at this. In fact, it actually feels like the opposite. This feels like a little prequel story that ties into an already established fantasy series, as there is no world building. Like, holy shit, the D&D campaigns I ran when I was 12 are better world building than this. But now, I want to talk about a couple of major problems I had with this book. These are issues I can see probably infecting a lot of contemporary fantasy, but I don't really read much contemporary fantasy, as I focus mainly on older books. But here goes. I'd like to take another moment to talk about the dialogue, because the dialogue is really awful. I know I already said it, but it's cringe, and it basically just tells me the plot, and all these characters that should have completely different voices sound identical. It's just Daniel Greene. Like, they all sound the same. There's Attack of the Clones in this shit. Go to your workplace and talk with your co-workers. Nobody has the same way of speaking. And I'm not even just talking people from different, like, countries have a different way of speaking. Like, I just mean, like, in general. Like, no one says things the exact same way. You could literally get rid of all the dialogue tags, just actually get rid of the detectives and just have some androgynous AI detectives spit all their dialogue, and basically nothing changes. But here's my main issue. And this isn't just unique to Breach of Peace, but this is... we're doing a review on it, so this is where I'm going to talk about it. Here's my main issue. Modern sensibilities polluting the prose. So I have a huge world-building issue here. What the fuck is this empire? It's clearly set up as some kind of pseudo-commie or pseudo-fascist holy empire, but here's the thing, it doesn't act that way. Where are we geographically? So the whole thing is clearly meant to be a riff or a rip-off of Industrial Revolution era England. Judging by the front cover, judging by just it's a holy empire, judging by just in general. It's clearly supposed to be England or an England clone. But the world isn't that. We have Samoan guys with white guys, and then there's the names. Like, a name like Khalid is clearly from a completely different region to names like Chapman or Samuel. So, has this empire already expanded across the world and colonized everywhere? Is it just starting out? Is this a trading hub? Who are we at war with? It mentions a war. What are the rebels? Why are they rebelling? We don't know. I'm guessing that this is an empire that's already expanded, as there is like a lot of racial diversity in the police force, for example, which just wouldn't happen in a more isolated empire. But which world-spanning, especially holy empire, have you ever seen that isn't racist in some way? The closest would actually be the British Empire, but in England itself, there were basically no non-British people for a long time. So this whole thing is just very confusing, and I feel it needed explaining. Like, I just needed some touchstone to understand the world. Same with the language used in the prose. This is actually annoys me more. So for example, there is a scene in a brothel, but the text refers to the whores as the modern PC term sex workers. This PC standard did not exist until relatively recently IRL, and while it is just in the prose itself, so it's not like an actual character is referring to them as sex workers, we're kind of inside Khalid's head, so the narration feels like it's coming from her. It's immersion breaking. They're whores. If we were going by the era, like, Daniel, get some balls and call them that. Don't break my immersion by using 21st century HR newspeak that most people don't even use today. It gives the book a sort of corporate, sanitized, risk-averse feeling that just takes me out of the story. Like, this book is a prime example of modern colonial Yankee trash entertainment. Not everywhere looks like a modern American city. Not every time period has our modern values. That's okay. That's how it was back then. The world sucked. Pretending it didn't is just an insult to the generations that worked through and fought to change it. If you want your fantasy series to be like modern day, write in modern day, or give me an actual in-universe reason for it to be like this. You can't just rely on, oh, it's like 1984, or it's like the British Empire, and then not commit to the bit and make it like that, right? Like, I need an explanation in-universe as to all this, like, the societal makeup. Anyway, rant over. Stuff like that just annoys me because it makes me think like the author didn't put any effort into the world building. I really can't decide whether to give this a 1 out of 5 or a 2 out of 5. It's not as bad as people said it was, and I am loosely interested in exploring the world more and seeing how Greene develops as a writer. But there are a ton of problems. I think I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5 just because I don't want to be that negative. I don't know what a 1 out of 5 book necessarily looks like, but I don't think this is it. But I'm going to be honest, this book would have crashed and burned if it wasn't by Daniel Greene. I don't understand how some people can be so non-critical about this. This isn't a good debut. You can't even, I see people hiding behind the whole, oh, it's his debut. Yeah, I don't fucking care. I've read many debuts from indie authors that are significantly better than this. And they do not have the money or the sort of backing or community support that someone like Daniel Greene would have. I honestly, and this is going to sound really bad, I just don't think this should have been published in the first place. It reads like a first draft. And, I don't know, I hate to be this negative, but it's not good. It's really not good. I just don't quite think I can say it's bad. It's competently enough put together, it flows nicely, there's a good rhythm to it, and despite all these criticisms, I still find myself wanting to read more. And I will probably be picking up Rebels Creed at some point, depending on how well this video performs. If you want to check out a debut book and compare it with Greene's, yeah, you can check out mine. And, I guess.
Buy my book! Buy my book! Before it's too late, people!